So the North London derby has finished. Spurs 2, Arsenal 3. At one stage, it looked a case of how many for Arsenal as they raced into a 3-0 lead. But it was nervy at the end. You can always tell when the opposition goalkeeper comes up late on to try and get an equaliser. But it wasn't to be. Mark Donaldson alongside one of the Premier League's finest former goalkeepers, Shaka Hislop, to discuss this one. Yeah, the narrative isn't the narrative that I was expecting when Arsenal went 3-0 up. That's a big win for the Gunners. They got over the line, but only just in the end, Shaq. How was it for you?
It was an incredible game to watch for a number of reasons. Listen, as you say, Mark, we will start with Arsenal getting over the line but that doesn't matter to Arsenal fans. All that matters is they got the 3 points, and that's exactly what they did. Unnecessarily nervy at the end, given how that first half panned out, but the 3 points, as I say, is all that mattered. In truth, it was an odd game, and to start with, both teams kind of feeling each other out. Even after Arsenal took the lead, still nobody had a shot on goal because the full opening goal came from a Højbjerg header himself as an own goal. So they had this strange feel about it, but then all of a sudden, Arsenal took their chances. They just looked like they would romp away with it. And as you mentioned, once it turned 3-0 on that Havertz goal after Saka scored the second, the bigger question was how much of a hiding would this be? Yeah. And it turned out to be otherwise, but that's certainly how it looked. 40 minutes into this one?
Look, the bottom line is Arsenal fans don't care. They were really enjoying themselves, and it was nervy. They deserved to win. And that puts them 4 points clear, albeit they've played 2 more games than City. So let's get to this game and let's find out what kind of game it was. Because it was very one-sided at the start. It was one-sided in parts of this game. But to be honest, at the start of the game, Arsenal were just really clinical because Spurs had a lot of the ball. But Spurs' inability to defend set plays really cost them today. Let's take the opening goal. Højbjerg gets the own goal after Saka's delivery. But what is it about this Spurs side that they seem to struggle defending set plays?
And that's the thing. I think when you look at the goals that they conceded, you'll be particularly disappointed. I thought Højbjerg was wrong side of Thomas Partey. And as a result, in having to kind of try to get his head on the ball, ends up leaning in towards his own goal. So he gets a touch and it sneaks in at Vicario's near post. But that's because I think Højbjerg is having to come back on himself, where typically you're defending a set piece, you want the attacker on the outside of you for that very reason. But I thought Højbjerg got himself in the wrong position, and Spurs paid the ultimate price. I will say, though, that from there, Spurs could have equalized. There were a couple of really good headers. I'm trying to think who now. Romero.
Christian Romero should have. He hit the post. Yep.
One just went wide. I think that was given as a foul. Hit the post with one that I really thought he should have done better with. Yeah. Had he gotten that in target, all of a sudden it's 1-1 and there's an excitement around the crowd. Yet again. Had those gone in, all of a sudden, maybe we're having a different conversation. But at the very least, the game at that point has a very, very different feel. So while you can look at and say at 40 minutes, Arsenal were 3 up and cruising and had the game in the bag, but for the width of a post, certainly that the first half at the very least may have had a very different feel.
And if Arsenal defender Gabriel's bum was a little bit bigger, he might have been playing on. There's a joke there about Arsenal, but I'll not go there because we've got to keep it Disney. Mickey van de Ven denied because he was just offside. There was a 5-minute spell around here where Spurs thought they'd equalised. They hadn't because van de Ven was offside. And then it's less than 60 seconds. At one end, there's contact on Kulusevski. Whether or not it's initiated by him or if he's clipped, it certainly looks like he's clipped. But whether there's enough. I think what gets him here is he takes another step and maybe another one before he goes down. I didn't think it was a foul on Maddison. The Kulusevski one, VAR suggesting there wasn't enough and sufficient contact. So Arsenal go up the park. It's a brilliant diagonal by Havertz. Ben Davies just a little bit too deep playing on Saka. That's not the worst thing he's done there. The worst thing he's done is show Saka back in on his left-hand side. If you show Saka down his right and he scores, look, there's not much you can do about that. But don't show him back in on his left. And he punished them, and Arsenal went 2-0 up.
I think Spurs were just spread too thin, and Ben Davies one-on-one with Bukayo Saka. That's a tough ask. That's a tough ask. Playing out on the Spurs left, Arsenal right. That's doubly so when you're in your own box and trying to protect a goal. But I'm with you in that. Well, first of all, I didn't think it was a penalty.
Okay.
Either contact for me was not enough to warrant a penalty. But then Spurs all of a sudden, as we know, play this high line, have players committed, 2 players go down, some are appealing, and it seems that they just switch off. And to Arsenal's credit, and more to the point, Declan Rice, who he wins the ball after I think it's Maddison goes down, throwing his arms up. Again, that was not a penalty at all for me. And then Arsenal in the counter-attack were just absolutely lethal. And then you have this situation where Davies is up against Bukayo Saka 1v1 in the middle of the box. That's a difficult task. And yes, we can sit here and say show Saka onto his weaker foot, but it's Bukayo Saka, and he is clever with the ball at his feet. But I just thought Spurs switched off, expecting a whistle, hoping for a whistle that never came. But let's be honest, I'm with Michael Oliver. That was not warranting. Neither challenge was warranting of a penalty.
Okay, let's talk your favourite specialised subject, goalkeepers. Why do the Spurs defence allow Ben White free reign and free access to Vicario to the extent that Ben White has taken the Velcro strap that you lot have got on your gloves and he's undone it just to really annoy him? And the Spurs defender's like, yeah, whatever. And then Havertz scores from Saka's header. They rectified it in the second half, but if you're Vicario, is it up to you to say to your defenders, give me a help here, or someone get close, or what's going on here?
Listen, I have zero sympathy for Spurs here. In that we had this exact conversation, Spurs versus Manchester City. Rodri on Vicario, and wasn't a foul then. Ben White on Vicario today was not a foul either. If you don't learn from those mistakes, you'll get punished again. And that's all that happened. Spurs got punished again. So how? I can't explain it. I really can't. And especially given how good Arsenal are from set pieces, I find the naivety from Arsenal sitting in this instance inexcusable. It was.
Nicholas Jover is the set-piece coach, and I know Stevie Nichol's beef is probably throwing coaches, right? And we'll get to that another day. But set-piece coaches have got a role. Austin McPhee, when he's at Aston Villa, has been involved. Nicholas Jover there as well, and he's clearly just wanting someone on the goalkeeper. We'll speak about goalkeepers and what David Raya is trying to chip a defender at the edge of his box. That allowed Spurs back into the game. And first of all, I don't know what Christian Romero's up there for in the first place, because he's left space at the back. But you're 3-0 down, so someone's got to do it. But you still need a faux pas from a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And that's what they got.
And that's exactly what it was, and that's as nicely as anybody could put that, because the game's won. The game's won, and you're just seeing this out. You are the only one. You can be your own worst enemy between you and the clock. Just run this down. So for David Raya, and I get it. This is who Arsenal are. This is how they've built their successes. But again, you're 3 up. At this point, only you are your worst enemies. And let's be honest, even in saying that, Spurs didn't offer an awful lot to worry. to worry Arsenal to this point. So you're 3 up. You've been untroubled all game long. Don't give a gift. And that's exactly what David Raya did. And for me, he made this a game. And while, yep, we can sit back now, or Arsenal can sit back now, breathe out. We took all 3 points. That's the only thing that mattered, whether it was 3-0 or 3-2 or 6-0 or 1-0. As long as they got 3 points, that's the only thing that mattered. This just became a contest when it really was. The wind had been all but out of the Spurs sail at that point.
Then it got interesting. 3 minutes from time, or 3 minutes from the end of the 90, in the 87th minute. The only issue for Spurs is it didn't come earlier, because then they would have had a bit longer to try and get the equaliser. The issue here is with Michael Oliver. It's right in front of him. And let's just say Ben Davies might be speaking at a higher pitch for a few hours after being leathered between the legs by Declan Rice. How does that require VAR to tell him it's a penalty?
I'll be honest, I didn't see it either. I thought Declan Rice checked his swing. I thought he stopped before he made contact. I mean, if you look at it in real time, that's kind of how it looked, because Declan Rice didn't follow through. But it's only when you see the review, when you see the replay, there's no question he makes contact. And in saying that, to Michael Oliver's credit and defense from there on in, he walks over to the screen, takes one look, and makes a decision.
Yeah,
it's not one of these drawn-out VAR experiences where you have to see it. You have to make sure he makes contact from 6 different angles. When what we know one will do. You don't have to see it from the reverse angle, from the left, from the right. Michael Oliver comes over, is like, oh, you made contact. That's a penalty. And so I'm with Michael Oliver in that. Looking at it in real time, I thought, oh, Declan Rice just about got away with that. He checked his swing. But then when you see it, and when you see the replay, while he checked his swing, he did make contact. So, right decision in the end.
Yeah, and it's maybe a little bit harsh to have a go at Michael Oliver, because even if he doesn't see it, surely he hears the squeals. Because if that happens to any...
Well, you can't go to somebody's squeal. Players today are going to squeal regardless. Let's be honest there. Players are going to make a noise. So he can't go on the noise. He can't.
Okay. Anyway, justice was done. It was a penalty. Well taken by Son. By the way, the 2 goals that Spurs scored in the second half, it's the first time in over 10 hours of football away from home in the Premier League that Arsenal have conceded. They've been phenomenal. And this is probably the biggest one. This is the hurdle that was probably going to be the toughest. We saw what happened to Liverpool. When you go into a derby game, you played in enough. They're different. Form goes out the window. So for Arsenal to get the job done, now, look, it's outside their hands. We're recording this live after the game. City are going to Forest. Phil Foden's ill, not in the squad. Haaland's on the bench. But if they do what they did to Brighton for the rest of the season, they're going to win the league. So Arsenal needed to win this regardless, if it was 3-0, 3-2, whatever. Yeah. And they did. So would you rather in this instance, and I probably know the answer here, because I'd rather have the games in hand that City have got, but would you rather have the points on the board be 4 clear with 2 games more played and be Arsenal, or would you rather be City ahead of this Forest game?
You want the points on the board.
Really?
You want those points. Well, let me quantify that. The old cliche is you want the points on the board. The issue is with this Manchester City, as we've seen time and time again, City just know how to get the job done.
They do.
In this running, I'm not sure. I have not seen a team as good at the business end of the season as I have this Manchester City since Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United, the great Manchester United teams. They just know exactly what it takes. I was at the Emirates a couple of weeks ago for Arsenal's game against Aston Villa, and I felt then that was an absolutely pivotal game for them. That if they dropped points then, I just couldn't see them finishing off the season in absolute perfection, and less about Arsenal's perfection and more about Manchester City's momentum. which is what they have at this point of the season. And strangely to say, maybe going out to Real Madrid in the Champions League has even aided Manchester City in that regard. Now they don't have to worry about midweek fixtures. But while you talk about Arsenal and regardless of what comes of this season, and we'll be here to discuss every single game as it happens. A couple of things just kind of struck me with it coming into this one. I think Spurs this season, as much as we're talking about Arsenal and title ambitions and what's needed from them, Spurs this season hinged entirely on this game for a couple of reasons. You want to deny Arsenal in your derby, City rivals, but you see Aston Villa drop points yesterday, and now all of a sudden that fourth spot the door is slightly ajar for you to sneak in. Again, Villa have the points, and while Spurs have the games in hand, you prefer the points. Certainly in this instance. So there was a lot about this game for Spurs that I felt they had to get it right. Maybe they didn't have to win it, but they had to at least pick up a point. Added to that, Spurs last played 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Arsenal has played 4 times since Spurs last played. And so coming into this one, I'm wondering, will Arsenal have the legs to keep up? Can Spurs really put them under pressure in that regard? Can Spurs run them into the ground? And then certainly the opening 40 minutes that we've discussed kind of answered that. And Arsenal, to their credit, they never slowed. They never let up. And while, yes, the criticism is it was a little too nervy at the end than maybe it should have been, credit Arsenal for the way that they endured.
Look, Spurs have been a breath of fresh air under Ange Postecoglou this season, and they've certainly improved. But Arsenal have improved as well. Bournemouth at home, Manchester United away, Everton at home. There's a good chance they take 9 points out of 9, and also a good chance it might not be enough. But all you're after at the start of the season is to show improvement over what has happened in the previous campaign. Arsenal have done that. They're not far away, are they?
No, they're not. I think probably you could say the same for both these teams. Had both these teams had clinical strikers, we could be having very, very different conversations about both of them.
They cost money, though, don't they, Shaq?
They do.
Kind of expensive.
But 10 months ago? I have to say, I was one that was saying Harry Kane needs to leave. That Spurs was going nowhere. And if Harry Kane really wanted to lift major silverware in his club career, he needed this move a season or two ago. But then now all of a sudden, can you imagine this Spurs with Harry Kane through the middle? As good as Heung-min Son is, he's not Harry Kane through the middle.
He's better coming wide left.
And exactly. And then you get to employ Heung-min Son in one of the wide areas. You don't lose Heung-min Son by any measure.
No.
And can you imagine this Spurs with a finisher of his quality? Can you imagine Arsenal with a finisher of, well, God forbid, Arsenal fans and Spurs fans won't like me for saying this, but can you imagine Arsenal with Harry Kane through the middle, and how different their season prospects look? I mean, it really kind of speaks to the improvement under both of them, but then maybe speaks to what's now needed as maybe that next step, which may be the final step, certainly in Arsenal's case.
Yeah, Kane leaves, gets 42 goals in 42 games in all competitions, and probably not going to win any silverware whatsoever. We still don't know who's going to win the Premier League title.
No,
it's likely to be Manchester City, but at the time of recording, they've still got to go to Forest, and they are 4 points behind, but with 2 games in hand. Arsenal had to win this one. They did in the North London derby. Wasn't as comfortable as it was for the majority of the game, but Arteta won't care. Final score, Tottenham Hotspur 2, Arsenal 3. Bye for now.